The millionaire thought he had left the past behind. But at the airport, one look was enough, and everything fell apart. The woman he loved was there, with a young man who looked just like him. And when she told the truth, the millionaire dropped to his knees, too weak to stand. Michael Granger stared out the airplane window as New York City's skyline came into view. 20 years. 20 years since he'd set foot on American soil. 20 years since he'd walked away from the only woman he'd ever loved. The captain's announcement about their final descent barely registered. Michael absently adjusted his Italian silk tie, a habit he'd developed over years of boardroom battles across Europe. At 42, his dark hair was now threaded with distinguished silver at the temples, and fine lines had etched themselves around his steel blue eyes that had seen too much, yet somehow not enough. "Mr. Granger, we'll be landing in 15 minutes. His personal assistant, Elizabeth, spoke from the seat across the aisle. "Your driver will be waiting at Terminal 4. Michael nodded, not bothering to respond. The throbbing in his temples had started again, a psychosomatic reminder of a disease that had dictated his life choices for 2 decades. A disease that required constant monitoring, regular medication, and had robbed him of the future he'd once dreamed of sharing with Megan Foster. Megan. The name still evoked a physical reaction, a tightness in his chest that no cardiologist could explain away. Her face remained as clear in his memory as the day he'd left her. Honey brown eyes wide with confusion and hurt, chestnut hair framing a face that had haunted his dreams ever since. "Your mother and uncle are expecting you at the Granger Tower tomorrow morning," Elizabeth continued, consulting her tablet. "The board meeting is scheduled for 9. "Move it to 10, Michael replied, his voice carrying the slight European accent he'd acquired during his self-imposed exile. "I need time to review the quarterly reports before facing the sharks." Elizabeth nodded, making the adjustment without question. She'd been with him for 5 years and knew better than to ask why he'd delayed his return to America for months after his father's death. Some topics remained off limits, even to her. The truth was simple and complex all at once. George Granger's death had left Michael as the rightful heir to the Granger Hotel empire, but his uncle Bruce had been acting CEO for years. According to the terms of his father's will, Michael had 6 months to return and claim his position, or control would permanently shift to Bruce. 5 months and 28 days had passed. As the plane touched down with a slight jolt, Michael steeled himself for what lay ahead. He wasn't the same naive 22-year-old who had fled New York with a broken heart. The European business world had hardened him, shaped him into the kind of ruthless businessman his father had always wanted him to be. The irony wasn't lost on him. "Welcome to New York, Mr. Granger," the flight attendant said as he strode past, his carry-on wheeled efficiently behind him. "Enjoy your stay." "I'm not staying," he almost replied, but caught himself. This wasn't a visit. This was a reckoning. JFK Airport buzzed with the familiar chaos he'd almost forgotten. The melting pot of languages, the hurried business people, tourists clutching guidebooks, families embracing in tearful reunions. Michael navigated through it all with practiced detachment, his tall frame and confident stride parting the crowds effortlessly. Elizabeth had arranged for expedited customs processing, and within 30 minutes of landing, Michael was striding through the arrival terminal toward the exit. That's when he saw her. 20 years should have dimmed her impact on him. They hadn't. Megan Foster stood near a coffee shop, her profile in view as she leaned down to say something to a young man seated at a small table. Her chestnut hair was shorter now, falling just below her shoulders, and there were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before, but she was still unmistakably Megan, still achingly beautiful. Michael froze mid-stride, his heart hammering against his ribs. A couple bumped into him from behind, muttering apologies he didn't register. Elizabeth was saying something about their driver, but her voice faded into background noise. The young man sitting at the table looked up at Megan and smiled, and Michael felt the world tilt beneath his feet. The boy, no, young man, couldn't have been more than 19 or 20. He had Michael's jawline, Michael's eyes, Michael's smile. Without conscious thought, Michael changed direction, moving toward them as if pulled by an invisible force. Elizabeth called after him. Confused, but he barely heard her. Megan turned, sensing his approach, and their eyes met across the terminal. 20 years collapsed into nothing, her face drained of color, her hand instinctively reaching out to touch the young man's shoulder. "Michael," she whispered, the word carrying to him despite the airport's cacophony. The young man looked up, confused by his mother's sudden tension, then followed her gaze. His eyes, Michael's eyes, narrowed in assessment, then widened in recognition from what must have been photographs he'd seen. "Megan," Michael said, his voice rougher than he intended. He stopped a few feet away from them, suddenly uncertain. "I didn't expect... I just landed." "I know," she replied, her composure returning slowly. "We're here to pick up my mother. Her flight from Chicago lands in 20 minutes. Her hand remained protectively on the young man's shoulder. "This is Aiden, my son. My son, not our son." The distinction felt like a knife between his ribs. Aiden stood, matching Michael's height exactly, his expression guarded. "I know who you are," he said, his voice carrying the same timbre as Michael's, but with a distinctly American accent. "You're Michael Granger." The boy extended no hand, offered no smile, just cool assessment. "I am," Michael confirmed, unable to tear his gaze from this younger version of himself. "It's nice to meet you, Aiden." Megan's knuckles whitened on the strap of her purse. "We should go, Aiden. Grandma's gate is on the other side of the terminal." "Wait," Michael said. More sharply than he intended, people nearby glanced their way. He lowered his voice. "Megan, please, just a minute." Something in his tone must have reached her. She hesitated, then nodded to Aiden. "Go check the arrival board, honey. Make sure her flight's on time." The young man frowned, clearly reluctant to leave her alone. "It's okay," she assured him. "Just give us a moment." Once Aiden had walked a short distance away, Michael stepped closer to Megan, close enough to catch the faint scent of her perfume, still the same after all these years. "Is he mine?" The question was barely audible, but it hung between them like thunder. Megan looked him directly in the eyes, her gaze unwavering. "Yes, he was born 7 months after you left." The terminal seemed to spin around him. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried," she said, her voice tight with barely controlled emotion. "I called. I wrote. For months. I tried to reach you. Your mother told me you didn't want to be found, that you'd moved on. Eventually, I believed her. I never got any messages. I never knew. And would it have mattered if you did?" Megan cut him off, 20 years of hurt sharpening her words. "You made your choice, Michael. You walked away without even giving me a reason why." Aiden was watching them intently from near the arrival board, his posture tense. "There's more you need to know," Megan said, her expression shifting from anger to something more complex. "Fear. Aiden is sick. He has a rare form of cardiomyopathy. He needs a bone marrow transplant, and we've exhausted all other donor options." She took a deep breath. "That's why I've been trying to find you for the past 3 years." The words hit Michael like physical blows. A son with a heart condition. The cruel irony was almost too much to bear. "I would never have contacted you if it wasn't a matter of life and death," Megan continued. "He's running out of time." Before Michael could respond, Aiden returned, his expression making it clear he'd heard at least part of their conversation. "Mom, we need to go," he said firmly, glancing at Michael with undisguised hostility. "Grandma's flight just landed." Megan nodded, then handed Michael a business card. "My number's on here. Call me tomorrow. We need to talk." She hesitated, then added quietly, "He's your son, Michael. Whether you want to be in his life or not, he needs your help to survive." With that, she turned and walked away, Aiden protectively at her side. Michael stood frozen, watching them disappear into the crowd, the business card clutched in his trembling hand. "Sir?" Elizabeth had caught up to him, concern evident in her voice. "Is everything all right?" Michael turned to her, his world fundamentally altered in the space of 5 minutes. "No," he said quietly. "Nothing is all right, and I need to change our plans." Outside, New York City awaited, the same but different, just like the life he'd left behind, which had continued without him in ways he could never have imagined. Michael barely slept that night. The luxurious penthouse suite at the Granger Manhattan, the flagship hotel of his family's empire, felt like a prison cell. He paced the floor until dawn, Megan's words echoing in his mind. "He's your son." Each time he closed his eyes, he saw Aiden's face, his face, looking back at him with undisguised contempt. By 7 a.m., he couldn't wait any longer. He dialed the number on Megan's card, pulse racing as he counted the rings. "Hello?" Her voice was groggy with sleep. "It's Michael. We need to talk." There was a pause, then rustling sounds. "It's not even 7. I need to see him," Michael said, bypassing pleasantries. "I need to understand everything." After a moment's hesitation, she agreed. "Meet us at Mount Sinai Hospital, Hematology Department. At 10, Aiden has his weekly checkup. I'll be there." 3 hours later, Michael stood in the hospital lobby, feeling distinctly out of place in his tailored suit amid patients in hospital gowns and visitors in casual clothes. He'd canceled the board meeting without explanation, sending his Uncle Bruce into a frenzy of suspicious text messages he'd ignored. The elevator doors opened to the hematology floor, and Megan was waiting for him, arms crossed defensively across her chest. She wore simple jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, a far cry from the corporate attorneys and socialites he'd surrounded himself with in Europe. Yet somehow, she commanded the space more authentically than anyone he'd met in years. "Before we go in," she said quietly, "there are things you need to know." She led him to a small waiting area where they sat on uncomfortable plastic chairs, knees almost touching in the confined space. "Aiden was diagnosed 3 years ago," she began, her voice clinical, as if distance from the words could lessen their pain. "He has a rare form of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy with unusual genetic markers. It's progressive and has become resistant to standard treatments." Michael flinched at the word cardiomyopathy, the same condition he'd supposedly been diagnosed with 20 years ago. "The doctors believe a bone marrow transplant might reset his immune system and slow the progression," Megan continued. "We've tried everything. National registries, testing friends, family." Her voice caught. "My compatibility wasn't close enough." "And you think I might be?" Michael finished for her. She nodded. "The genetic patterns suggest it's inherited paternally. That's when I started looking for you." Her eyes met his, unflinching. "I wouldn't have otherwise." The unspoken accusation hung between them. "I didn't want you back in our lives." "Why didn't you tell me you were pregnant?" Michael asked. The question that had been burning inside him since yesterday. Megan's eyes flashed. "I discovered it a week after you disappeared. I called your mother. She said you'd left the country, that you needed a clean break." Her fingers twisted together in her lap. "When I told her about the baby, she said you'd been clear that you didn't want children. Especially with," she swallowed hard, "with someone like me." Michael felt physically ill. "I never said that. Never." "Maybe not. But when someone walks away without even saying goodbye, what was I supposed to think?" She took a steadying breath. "For years, I sent letters to every Granger hotel in Europe. I called. I even flew to London once when I heard you were there for a conference. Your assistant said you refused to see me. I never knew, Megan. I swear to you." Something in his voice must have reached her. Her expression softened slightly. "Why did you leave like that after everything we were to each other?" Before he could answer, a door opened down the hall and Aiden emerged, accompanied by a doctor. Michael's breath caught at the sight of his son's pale face and the slight unsteadiness in his walk. "Mom," Aiden called, spotting them. His eyes narrowed when he saw Michael. "What's he doing here?" Megan stood. "Dr. Chen. This is Michael Granger, Aiden's biological father." The doctor, a petite Asian woman in her 50s, assessed Michael with newfound interest. "Mr. Granger, I'm Dr. Helen Chen. I've been treating Aiden for the past 3 years." She extended her hand, which Michael shook automatically. "Your presence could be very significant for Aiden's treatment options." "I want to help," Michael said, looking at Aiden, who refused to meet his gaze. "Whatever it takes." Dr. Chen nodded. "We'll need comprehensive testing to determine compatibility. If you're willing, we could start today." "Of course. I didn't ask for this," Aiden said suddenly, his voice tight with emotion. "I don't need his help." "Aiden," Megan began gently. "No, Mom. 20 years of nothing, and now he shows up expecting what? Gratitude." The outburst seemed to drain him. His face paled further, and he leaned against the wall for support. Michael took a step toward him, instinctively reaching out, but Aiden flinched away. "Let's continue this conversation in my office, Doctor," Chen suggested, her tone brooking no argument. She led them into a small consultation room with medical diagrams on the walls and files stacked neatly on the desk. Once they were seated, she pulled up Aiden's file on her computer. "Mr. Granger, Aiden's condition is unusual. The genetic markers we've identified suggest a hereditary component that may be linked to your family medical history. I was diagnosed with a heart condition in my early 20s, Michael said, the familiar weight of the lie settling on his shoulders, a lie he'd lived with for so long it felt like truth. Cardiomyopathy, that's why. He glanced at Megan. That's why I left. Megan's eyes widened in shock. What? My mother and our family doctor told me I had a genetic heart condition that would kill me before 40. They said it was hereditary, that I shouldn't have children. The words felt hollow as he spoke them. I couldn't bear to make you watch me die, Megan. I couldn't burden you with that. You left me because you thought you were dying. Megan's voice was barely a whisper. And you didn't think I deserved to know, to have a choice. I was 22 and terrified. They convinced me it was the right thing to do. Dr. Chen cleared her throat, bringing their attention back to the present. Mr. Granger, when was your last cardiac evaluation? 6 months ago, the same as always. Medication adjustments, lifestyle restrictions. They told me the condition was stable. Interesting. Dr. Chen typed something into her computer. I'd like to run a complete cardiac workup on you as well. There may be connections between your condition and Aiden's that could inform our approach. Aiden, who had been silent, suddenly spoke. If he has the same condition, how is he still alive? Still healthy enough to run hotels across Europe? It was a fair question, one Michael had never allowed himself to examine too closely. Advanced management techniques, constant monitoring, Michael said automatically, repeating what he'd been told for years. But as he said it, doubt crept in. If his condition was so serious, why had he never had a single cardiac episode? Not one symptom beyond the occasional stress headache. Dr. Chen was watching him thoughtfully. We've made significant advances in genetic testing since you were diagnosed, Mr. Granger. I think a fresh evaluation would be beneficial for both you and Aiden. For the first time, Aiden looked directly at Michael, curiosity momentarily overriding his hostility. You really thought you were going to die? Michael nodded. I still do. Eventually. We all die eventually, Aiden said with the peculiar wisdom of the seriously ill. Some of us just have a better idea of when. The simple statement hit Michael like a physical blow. This was his son, facing mortality at 19 while Michael had hidden from it for 20 years. I'm here now, Michael said quietly, and I'm not going anywhere. We'll see, Aiden replied, but some of the edge had gone from his voice. Dr. Chen stood. If you'll come with me, Mr. Granger, we can start the compatibility testing today. Aiden, you're free to go, but remember, limited activity, plenty of rest. As Michael followed the doctor, he caught Megan's eye. In that brief glance, decades of hurt, confusion, and what might have been passed between them, along with something new, a fragile tendril of hope, rooted in the sun they shared and the truth that was finally emerging. The tests took hours. Blood draws, cheek swabs, medical history questionnaires that Michael couldn't fully answer. When the nurse handed him a form asking about family history of heart disease, he paused over the checkboxes, the pen hovering uncertainly. For 20 years, he'd assumed his condition was hereditary, but had never seen actual evidence. You can leave that section blank if you're unsure, the nurse said kindly. Dr. Chen ordered a comprehensive genetic panel anyway. By late afternoon, Michael sat in Dr. Chen's office again, exhausted and wearing the hospital bracelet they'd insisted on for the cardiac monitoring tests. Your preliminary tests are interesting, Dr. Chen said, studying her computer screen with a furrowed brow. Your cardiac function appears completely normal for a man your age. Blood pressure, heart rhythm, stress test, all excellent. That's not possible, Michael said automatically. I've been on medication for 20 years. Yes, Dr. Chen looked up at him. Mr. Granger, what symptoms have you experienced over these 2 decades? Michael opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. What symptoms had there been? Really? Occasional headaches, fatigue after long flights, nothing that couldn't be attributed to normal stress and travel. The medications control it, he said weakly. Dr. Chen removed her glasses. I'd like to see your complete medical records. The genetic tests will take a few days, but based on what I'm seeing, I have some concerns about your original diagnosis. A cold feeling settled in Michael's stomach. You think I was misdiagnosed? I can't say for certain yet, but if your condition is as severe as you've been led to believe, I would expect to see more clinical evidence. Michael sat back, mind racing. If he'd been healthy all along, the implications were staggering. 20 years of his life, 20 years away from Megan, 20 years of not knowing his son. How soon until we know if I'm a compatible donor for Aiden? 3 to 5 days for the complete results. Dr. Chen's expression softened. In the meantime, Aiden has agreed to let you join his tutoring session tomorrow. Tutoring. Yes, his condition has meant frequent absences from school, so he works with a tutor 3 times a week. He's quite brilliant at mathematics, taking advanced college courses online. A small, unexpected surge of pride warmed Michael's chest. I studied engineering before joining the family business. I always loved math. Dr. Chen smiled. Perhaps you've found some common ground. Michael's driver dropped him at the Granger Tower late that afternoon. The gleaming 50-story headquarters of Granger International Hotels had been his father's pride, the physical manifestation of decades of business acumen and relentless ambition. Now it represented something else entirely, the fortress that had kept Michael isolated from the truth. Michael, finally, his mother's voice carried across the marble lobby. Linda Granger approached, impeccably dressed in a designer suit that accentuated her still slim figure at 68. Her silver blonde hair was styled in the same elegant bob she'd worn for decades, her makeup flawless as always. She air-kissed his cheeks, her perfume expensive and overwhelming. "We expected you at the board meeting this morning," she chided, linking her arm through his and steering him toward the private elevators. "Bruce had to reschedule everything. I had more important matters to attend to," Michael replied coolly, extracting his arm from hers. "Where is Uncle Bruce now?" "In your office. We need to discuss the transition of leadership before the shareholders' meeting next week." She studied him with shrewd eyes. "You look tired, darling. Are you taking your medication?" The question hit differently now, loaded with potential deceit. "Religiously," he answered, watching her face carefully. "Mother, did you ever receive communications from Megan Foster after I left?" Linda stiffened almost imperceptibly. "That college girlfriend. Why would you ask about her now?" "I ran into her at the airport yesterday." "How unfortunate," Linda murmured. "I hope it wasn't too awkward." The elevator arrived, and they stepped inside. Michael waited until the doors closed before saying, "She was with her son, my son." Linda's hand flew to her throat, her carefully composed expression faltering. "What ridiculous nonsense. You can't possibly believe—" "He looks exactly like me, Mother, and genetic testing will confirm it in a few days. After 20 years. She appears with some boy and claims he's yours." Linda's voice rose. "It's obviously a ploy for money now that you're back to claim your inheritance." Michael's jaw tightened. "Aiden is dying. He needs a bone marrow transplant." "Oh, how convenient." The elevator stopped on the executive floor as they exited. Michael grabbed his mother's arm, forcing her to look at him. "Did you know? Did you keep her from contacting me?" For a fleeting moment, something that looked like guilt flashed across Linda's face. Then her expression hardened. "You needed a clean break, Michael. You weren't thinking clearly back then. Throwing away your future for some scholarship girl from a nobody family. That nobody raised my son alone while I was exiled to Europe because of a heart condition that may not even exist." Linda's face paled. "What are you talking about?" "I had a full cardiac workup today. The doctor found nothing wrong with my heart." "Nothing, Mother." Before she could respond, a door opened down the corridor, and Bruce Granger emerged from the corner office. At 65, Bruce was still imposing. Tall, silver-haired, with the same Granger blue eyes as Michael, though his held none of his nephew's warmth. "There you are," Bruce boomed, striding toward them. "The prodigal returns, though apparently not for the important meeting we scheduled." "Uncle Bruce?" Michael acknowledged coolly. "I see you've made yourself comfortable in my father's office." Bruce's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Just keeping the seat warm, nephew? Though I must say, after 5 years as acting CEO, that chair fits rather well." Linda quickly interjected. Michael had some medical appointments today. His condition, you know. Bruce's expression shifted to practiced concern. Ah, yes. How are you feeling? Not overtaxing yourself, I hope? Actually, I'm feeling better than I have in years, Michael replied. In fact, I'll be taking a much more active role in the company than we originally discussed, starting tomorrow. Bruce and Linda exchanged a quick glance that Michael wouldn't have noticed if he hadn't been watching for it. Perhaps we should discuss this privately, Bruce suggested, gesturing toward the office. Tomorrow, Michael said firmly. I've had a long day. Elizabeth will send you my availability. He turned and walked back to the elevator, leaving his mother and uncle staring after him. That night, alone in his penthouse, Michael poured himself a scotch he'd never allowed himself to drink, one of many restrictions his supposed heart condition had imposed. The amber liquid burned pleasantly as he swallowed it. A small act of rebellion against 20 years of lies. He opened his laptop and began searching archives of his father's business dealings, focusing on the period around his departure for Europe. There had to be a reason beyond a false medical diagnosis, something that made it imperative to separate him from Megan in America. A news article from the business section of a 20-year-old newspaper caught his eye. The headline read, Granger Hotels secures major European expansion. The article detailed how Granger International had acquired a struggling hotel chain in Europe, transforming their international presence. The timing aligned perfectly with Michael's sudden departure to oversee European operations. His phone rang, interrupting his research. Mr. Granger? This is Dr. Chen, a voice said when he answered. I hope I'm not calling too late. Not at all, what is it? I've been reviewing more of your test results in Aiden's genetic profile. Something unusual has come up that I'd prefer to discuss in person. Could you come in tomorrow after Aiden's tutoring session? Is it about the transplant compatibility? There was a brief hesitation. Partially. But there's more. I've requested your complete medical records from Dr. Hastings, your family physician. But his office informed me that he passed away 3 years ago. A chill ran down Michael's spine. I wasn't informed. Even more concerning, they claim your records were lost in a fire at their storage facility. How convenient, Michael muttered. Indeed, Mr. Granger, I don't want to alarm you, but these circumstances are unusual. After hanging up, Michael returned to his computer typing, Dr. Robert Hastings' death into the search engine. The results showed an obituary from 3 years ago. Dr. Robert Hastings, 72, died unexpectedly at his vacation home in the Adirondacks. Cause of death, apparent heart attack. Heart attack. The irony wasn't lost on Michael. His phone buzzed with a text message from Megan. Aiden's tutor tomorrow, 2 p.m., 145 West 67th Seat, Apt 5B, if you're still coming, Michael replied immediately. I'll be there. As he stared out at the New York skyline, pieces were starting to come together, forming a picture he didn't want to see but couldn't look away from. His mother and uncle's strange reactions, the convenient death of the doctor who diagnosed him, the missing medical records. 20 years ago, someone had orchestrated the biggest lie of his life, and he was finally getting close to understanding why. Michael arrived at the modest brownstone apartment building on West 67th Street precisely at 2 p.m. The neighborhood was pleasant but unpretentious, a far cry from the luxury high-rises that housed the Granger properties. He found himself wondering about the life Megan had built here. Raising their son alone while he accumulated wealth and power in Europe, Megan opened the door before he could knock, as if she'd been watching for him through the peephole. You're right on time, she said, stepping aside to let him in. The apartment was small but warm, bookshelves lining the walls, framed academic certificates hanging beside family photos, a worn but comfortable-looking couch facing a small television. It was lived in, genuine. Everything the sterile hotel suites he'd called home for years were not. Aiden's in his room with Professor Davis, Megan explained, leading him down a short hallway. They're working on some calculus problem that's apparently revolutionary. I stopped understanding his math homework around 10th grade. The pride in her voice was unmistakable. Despite everything, she'd raised an extraordinary young man. Megan, Michael said, stopping her before they reached Aiden's room. About yesterday. What I told you about why I left. Her expression tightened. We can't change the past, Michael. But if I was lied to, if we both were, then we lost 20 years for nothing. Her voice was flat. That doesn't fix anything now. Before Michael could respond, a door opened, and an elderly man with wild white hair and thick glasses emerged, clutching a notebook. "Marvelous boy you have, Megan," the man exclaimed, then noticed Michael. "Ah, you must be the father. The resemblance is striking. Professor Davis." "This is Michael Granger," Megan introduced them. "Michael, Professor Davis has been tutoring Aiden for the past year." The professor shook Michael's hand vigorously. "Your son has quite the mathematical mind, Mr. Granger. His approach to non-linear equations reminds me of a young Stephen Hawking." "Is he up for visitors?" Michael asked, glancing toward the partially open door. "Oh, yes. In fact, he's been asking about you. Something about engineering principles." The professor gathered his things. "I'll see myself out, Megan. Same time Thursday." After the professor left, Megan looked at Michael with surprise. "He asked about you. That's unexpected." Michael shrugged, trying to hide his pleasure at this small opening. "Dr. Chen mentioned he's strong in mathematics. I thought we might have that in common." "Be gentle with him," Megan cautioned. "His energy levels fluctuate, and he tires easily." Michael nodded and knocked softly on Aiden's door. "Come in," called a voice that sounded disconcertingly like his own at a younger age. Aiden's room was exactly what Michael would have expected from a brilliant 19-year-old. Walls covered with scientific posters, bookshelves overflowing with texts far beyond high school level, a desk cluttered with papers, and a sophisticated computer setup. The boy himself sat propped up on his bed, a textbook open beside him. "Your professor speaks highly of you," Michael said, hovering awkwardly by the door. Aiden shrugged. "He exaggerates, but I do enjoy the work." "May I?" Michael gestured to a chair near the bed. Aiden nodded, watching him with those eerily familiar blue eyes. Up close, Michael could see the fatigue in his face, the slightly bluish tint to his lips that spoke of impaired circulation. "Mom said you studied engineering," Aiden said after an uncomfortable silence. "At MIT before I joined the family business." Michael noticed a complex equation scrawled on a whiteboard mounted to the wall. "Is that what you were working on with Professor Davis?" For the first time, Aiden's expression showed something other than resentment, a flash of genuine enthusiasm. "It's a problem related to cardiac blood flow modeling. I've been trying to develop a more accurate mathematical model for how blood moves through compromised ventricles." "You're researching your own condition." "Someone has to." Aiden gestured to the equation. "Current models don't account for all the variables." Michael studied the whiteboard. Despite 20 years away from serious mathematics, he could follow most of Aiden's work. "You're not accounting for ventricular wall elasticity here," he pointed out, standing to examine the equation more closely. Aiden's eyebrows rose. That's exactly what Professor Davis said. For the next 30 minutes, they lost themselves in pure mathematics, the tension between them temporarily suspended as they debated coefficients and variables. Michael found himself drawn into the elegant complexity of his son's thinking, impressed by his intuitive grasp of advanced concepts. "You know," Michael said, during a pause in their discussion, "I have access to some of the best medical research facilities in Europe. I could arrange for your research to be reviewed by specialists in cardiovascular modeling." Aiden hesitated, then asked cautiously, "Why would you do that?" "Because it's brilliant work," Michael answered honestly. "And because you're my son." Aiden looked away, his moment of openness evaporating. "For 20 years, I was just Megan Foster's kid. Now suddenly I'm Michael Granger's son, because it's convenient for you." The words stung, but Michael couldn't deny their truth. "I can't change what I didn't know, Aiden, but I'm here now, and I want to help, not just with the transplant. And if you're not a match, will you disappear again?" "No." The certainty in Michael's voice surprised even him. "I'm done disappearing." Aiden studied him skeptically. "So what's your story?" "Mom never really talked about you until my diagnosis got worse. Then suddenly she was hunting for you like it was a crusade." Michael weighed his words carefully. "I was told I had the same heart condition you have, that it would kill me young, that it was hereditary and I shouldn't have children." He ran a hand through his hair. "I thought I was protecting your mother by leaving, but you didn't die." "No, and now I'm not sure I was ever sick." Aiden's eyes widened. "You think someone lied to you? Why would anyone do that?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out." Michael glanced at his watch. "I have an appointment with Dr. Chen in an hour to discuss some test results. About the transplant. Michael nodded. Among other things, she seems to have questions about my original diagnosis. I should be there. Aiden swung his legs over the side of the bed with surprising determination. It's my life we're talking about, Aiden. I don't think... I'm coming. The stubborn set of his jaw was so like Michael's own that it was startling. Mom, he called out. Megan appeared in the doorway almost immediately, concern etched on her face. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, but I want to go to Dr. Chen's appointment with him. Aiden still couldn't bring himself to say my father. Megan looked between them. Surprise evident. Are you sure? You know Dr. Chen will just call us later with the results. I'm sure. Aiden was already pulling a sweatshirt over his head. I'm tired of being talked about like I'm not in the room. This is my body, my future. 20 minutes later, they were in Michael's town car headed to the hospital. The silence was tense until Aiden suddenly asked, "If you find out someone lied to you about your heart, what are you going to do?" Michael looked out at the New York streets passing by. Find out why, and make them answer for 20 years of stolen time. Time you could have spent with us, Aiden said quietly. Michael turned to look at his son. This brilliant, fragile young man with his eyes and his mind. Yes, he said simply. Time I could have spent with you. The tendril of connection between them was fragile, but it was there, born from shared mathematical understanding and the growing suspicion that they had both been victims of the same elaborate deception. When they arrived at Dr. Chen's office, her expression of surprise at seeing all three of them quickly shifted to professional concern. "I'm glad you're all here," she said, gesturing them to sit. "The test results have come back, and there's something you all need to know." She opened a folder on her desk, flipping through several pages before looking up at them. "Michael, you are indeed Aiden's biological father. The genetic markers confirm it conclusively." Megan exhaled softly beside him, though they'd all known it. The confirmation seemed to release something in the room. "And the transplant compatibility?" Michael asked. "You're nearly a perfect match," Dr. Chen said, "which is extraordinary luck, but..." She paused, her expression troubled. "But what?" Aiden leaned forward, tension radiating from his thin frame. "The genetic panel I ran shows no evidence of the hereditary cardiomyopathy Michael was supposedly diagnosed with, Doctor." Chen removed her glasses. "In fact, Michael, I can find no clinical evidence that you have any cardiac abnormality whatsoever. Your heart is in excellent condition for a man your age." The revelation hung in the air between them. "You're saying I was deliberately misdiagnosed?" Michael's voice was tight with rage. "For 20 years. I can't say for certain without your original records," Dr. Chen replied carefully. "But based on these results, yes, that is my professional opinion." Aiden looked between Dr. Chen and Michael, his expression stricken. "But I do have cardiomyopathy. The tests confirm it." "Yes, you do," Dr. Chen agreed. "But it's not the hereditary form we initially suspected. The genetic markers suggest an extremely rare variant that can be triggered by certain medications during early fetal development." Megan paled. "Medications? I didn't take anything during pregnancy. I was so careful." "It wouldn't necessarily have been something you knowingly took, Doctor." Chen explained gently. "Certain supplements or herbal remedies can sometimes be contaminated." Michael's mind raced, connecting dots he'd never seen before. "Or deliberately adulterated," he said, the cold certainty of it settling in his bones. "Michael," Megan began, but he cut her off. "This wasn't a coincidence," he said, standing abruptly, "and I think I know exactly where to start looking for answers." Michael stormed into Granger Tower the next morning, with a focus he hadn't felt in years. Elizabeth had cleared his schedule despite Bruce's protests, and security had been instructed to admit him to every area of the building, including the executive archives, which housed decades of corporate records. "I need everything from the month I left for Europe," he instructed the archivist, a timid man named Jenkins who'd been with the company since Michael was a child. "Board minutes, acquisition documents, my father's personal correspondence, everything." "Sir, those records are sealed by executive order," Jenkins stammered, glancing nervously at the phone. "I'd need Mr. Bruce Granger's approval to..." Michael leaned across the desk. "I own this company, Jenkins, not my uncle." The archivist swallowed hard, then nodded. It will take some time to gather everything. You have 1 hour. While waiting, Michael used his executive access to search the digital archives. Most files from that period had been incompletely digitized. Convenient for anyone wanting to obscure information, but there was enough to begin piecing together a disturbing picture. The European acquisition that had served as pretext for his relocation had been significantly overvalued. Granger International had paid nearly double the market price for the struggling hotel chain, a financial decision so questionable it bordered on corporate malfeasance. His father, a notoriously shrewd businessman, would never have approved such a deal unless there were extenuating circumstances. The elevator chimed, and Michael looked up to see his mother stepping into the archive room, her expression controlled, but eyes betraying concern. "I'm told you're digging through ancient history," Linda said lightly, as if they were discussing menu choices rather than potentially criminal deception. "Anything interesting?" "Just trying to understand why we overpaid so dramatically for the Beaumont Hotel's acquisition," Michael replied, watching her carefully. "It's almost as if someone was desperate to create a reason for me to leave the country." Linda's smile tightened. "That was 20 years ago, darling. Markets change. Valuations fluctuate. Valuations don't fluctuate by 100%, Mother. Not even in a volatile market." He leaned back in his chair. "Strange coincidence that this terrible business decision happened right when I was diagnosed with a heart condition I apparently don't have." Color drained from Linda's face. "What are you talking about?" "Dr. Chen ran a full genetic panel and cardiac workup. I'm perfectly healthy, Mother. Always have been." Michael stood slowly. 20 years of medications, restrictions, and exile, all based on a lie. Linda's composure slipped, her hand trembling slightly as she clutched her designer handbag. "Michael, you don't understand." "Then explain it to me," he challenged. "Explain why you separated me from the woman I loved, why you never told me I had a son, why that son is now dying from a condition that may have been deliberately caused." "That's absurd. I would never," Linda faltered, her protest sounding hollow even to her own ears. "Never what? Lie to your own son, manipulate his life, hide his child from him." Michael's voice was deadly quiet. "Dr. Chen believes Aiden's condition could have been triggered by something Megan unknowingly ingested during pregnancy. Did you have anything to do with that?" Horror flashed across Linda's face. Genuine, Michael thought. "No, I would never harm a child, not even—" She stopped abruptly. "Not even Megan Foster's child. Is that what you were going to say?" Michael felt sick. "He's my son too, Mother. Your grandson." Linda sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of her 68 years. "I didn't know about the pregnancy until after you left. Megan came to the house, hysterical, saying she was carrying your child." She looked away. "I told her you'd moved on, that you didn't want to be found. You intercepted her letters." Linda didn't deny it. "I was protecting you." "From what? Happiness? Family? Love?" Michael slammed his hand on the desk. "What was so important that you had to destroy everything that mattered to me?" Before Linda could answer, Jenkins returned with a cart of archive boxes. His eyes widened at the obvious tension, but he silently deposited the materials and retreated. Michael opened the first box, pulling out a leather-bound ledger, his father's private business journal. As he flipped through the pages, a folded document slipped out. His father's original will, dated a year before Michael left for Europe. His eyes scanned the legal text until they froze on a specific clause. Should Michael Christopher Granger produce a legitimate heir before his 30th birthday, full control of Granger International and all associated holdings shall pass directly to him upon my death, superseding all interim management arrangements and excluding Linda Granger and Bruce Granger from executive decision-making authority. Michael looked up from the document to find his mother watching him with resignation. "This is why," he said, his voice hollow. "This is why you sent me away. Why you kept Megan's pregnancy from me." He held up the will. "If I'd known about Aiden and claimed him as my son before I turned 30, you and Uncle Bruce would have been cut out completely when Father died." Linda's silence was confirmation enough. "Did Father change this clause in his final will?" She shook her head. "No, but by the time he died, you were well past 30, and we'd successfully kept you from knowing about your son. We, you, and Bruce planned this together." The betrayal burned. "It was Bruce's idea initially," Linda admitted. "The fake diagnosis, sending you to Europe. I just wanted to separate you from that girl. She wasn't right for you, for our family." Bruce saw the opportunity to secure his position. Michael struggled to process the magnitude of the deception. And Dr. Hastings, was he in on it too? Robert was persuaded. Bruce had leverage over him. Some indiscretion from years ago. Linda looked down at her perfectly manicured hands. "We never intended for it to go this far. You were supposed to come back after a year or two, date appropriate women, marry someone suitable. Instead, I believed I was dying and stayed away for 20 years. Michael's laugh was bitter. "And what about Aiden's condition? Was that an unexpected bonus in your plan?" Linda's head snapped up. Head. "I had nothing to do with that. Nothing. But Bruce might have." She hesitated just long enough to confirm Michael's suspicion. "My God," he whispered. "He poisoned a pregnant woman to eliminate a potential threat to his position. My son is dying because of corporate succession planning. If Bruce did something to that girl—" "I didn't know about it," Linda insisted. "You have to believe me." "I don't have to believe anything you say ever again," Michael replied coldly. His phone buzzed. A text from Megan. "Aiden collapsed at school. We're at Mount Sinai emergency. Dr. Chen says hurry." Terror gripped him. "I have to go." "I have." "Aiden's in the hospital." Linda rose. "I'll come with you." "Stay away from my family," Michael said, gathering the will and several other documents. "I'm going to make this right, Mother. And when I do, you and Bruce will lose everything." The hospital emergency room was controlled chaos. Michael found Megan in a corridor outside a treatment room, her face pale with fear. "What happened?" he asked, taking her hands without thinking. His heart started racing during his physics class. He passed out. Tears welled in her eyes. "They're saying it's progressing faster than they expected. The medications aren't working anymore." Dr. Chen emerged from the treatment room, her expression grim. "We've stabilized him for now, but his cardiac function is declining rapidly. We need to move up the transplant timeline." "How soon?" Michael asked. "Tomorrow," Dr. Chen replied. "Frankly, we don't have time to wait. Do it, whatever he needs." As Dr. Chen left to make arrangements, Michael turned to Megan. "I found out why they separated us," he said quietly, showing her the clause in his father's will. "This is why they kept Aiden from me. If I'd acknowledged him before I turned 30, I would have gained complete control of the company, cutting out my mother and uncle." Megan read the document, her expression hardening. "They destroyed our lives for money. Power, more than money, and I think Bruce may have done something to harm you during your pregnancy. Something that caused Aiden's condition." Megan's face went ashen. "What are you saying?" "Dr. Chen mentioned contaminated supplements. Did Bruce ever give you anything? Vitamins, herbal tea, anything at all?" Megan's hand flew to her mouth. "The prenatal vitamins," she whispered. "After you left, I discovered I was pregnant. I was broke, desperate. Your mother refused to help, but Bruce, he showed up at my apartment one day, saying he felt bad about how everything had happened. He gave me expensive prenatal vitamins, said they were the best available." Her voice broke. "I took them for 2 months before my doctor prescribed different ones." Michael felt physically ill. "We need to tell Dr. Chen. If we can identify exactly what he gave you, it might help with Aiden's treatment." A nurse called from the doorway. "You can see him now." They found Aiden looking frighteningly fragile, connected to monitors that beeped steadily. His eyes fluttered open when they entered. "Hey," he said weakly, attempting a smile. "So much for trying to be normal for one day." Michael approached the bed cautiously. "Dr. Chen says we're doing the transplant tomorrow." Aiden nodded. "I heard. Guess we're finding out if you're just a match on paper or the real deal." "I'm the real deal," Michael promised, surprising himself by reaching for his son's hand. Even more surprising, Aiden didn't pull away. "If this works," Aiden said after a moment, "I want to know everything. Why you left. Why you never knew about me. All of it." Michael glanced at Megan, who nodded slightly. "I promise," he told his son. "No more secrets." As Aiden drifted into much-needed sleep, Michael and Megan stepped into the hallway. The weight of 2 decades of manipulation hung between them. "We're going to fix this," Michael vowed. "First Aiden, then Bruce and my mother." Megan's eyes, so familiar even after all these years, held a fierceness he remembered well. Bruce tried to hurt our son. He may have caused his condition. He'll pay for that, Michael promised. I'll make sure of it. What neither of them knew was that Bruce Granger was already making moves to ensure that never happened. In his office across town, he reviewed security footage showing Michael in the archives, then picked up his phone to make a call. "We have a problem," he told the person on the other end. "The transplant needs to fail." Dawn broke over New York City as Michael paced the hospital waiting room. He'd barely slept, choosing instead to stay near Aiden's room where nurses monitored his deteriorating condition throughout the night. Megan had finally dozed off in an uncomfortable chair, her face etched with exhaustion. Even in sleep, his phone buzzed. A text from Elizabeth. "Bruce called emergency board meeting for 9 a.m. Claims you're mentally unfit to take control." Michael's jaw tightened. Of course Bruce would make his move now, when Michael couldn't possibly attend. He typed back, "Stall them. I need 48 hours. Elizabeth replied immediately, "Will do my best. How's your son?" The word still felt strange. Son. But right in a way nothing had for 20 years. "Fighting," Michael responded. "We both are." Dr. Chen appeared, clipboard in hand, her normally immaculate appearance showing signs of a sleepless night. "We need to begin prep for the procedure," she said quietly, mindful of Megan's sleeping form. "There's paperwork to sign and we need to start your pre-donation protocol." Michael nodded, following her to a small consultation room where several forms awaited. As he read through the donor consent documents, a detail caught his eye. "These blood type results, they're different from what you told us yesterday." Dr. Chen frowned, taking the paper. "That's not possible." She examined the form carefully. "These aren't the results I reviewed. Your blood type was confirmed as matching Aiden's." Michael's suspicions ignited. Could someone have altered the records? "Not without access to our system," Dr. Chen said, but her eyes narrowed. "Let me confirm this directly." She stepped out, returning minutes later with a troubled expression. "You're right. The electronic record was changed overnight. Fortunately, I keep offline backups of critical patient data." "Bruce," Michael said grimly. "He's trying to sabotage the transplant. That's a serious accusation. And attempted murder is a serious crime." Michael finished signing the forms. "Can you ensure the security of the procedure? No unauthorized personnel? No last-minute changes?" Dr. Chen's expression hardened. "I'll personally oversee every aspect. If someone's interfering with my patient's care, they'll have to go through me." Michael's respect for the petite doctor increased exponentially. "Thank you." A soft knock interrupted them, as a nurse poked her head in. "Dr. Chen, the patient's asking for his father." "Father?" The word sent a surge of emotion through Michael that was equal parts pride and terror. He'd been too late for Aiden's first steps, first words, first day of school, but not too late for this. Not if they succeeded. He found Aiden propped up in bed, looking even paler than the previous day, dark circles shadowing his eyes. Despite his weakened state, the boy's mind remained razor-sharp. "They explained the procedure," Aiden said without preamble. "It's going to be rough on you." Michael shrugged. "I can handle it. The survival rate for hypertrophic cardiomyopathy at my stage is about 35%. Aiden continued clinically. "Even with a perfect match and successful transplant. Those statistics don't account for your determination," Michael replied, pulling a chair closer to the bed. "Or mine." Aiden studied him, as if trying to solve a complex equation. "Why are you doing this, really? You could have just taken a blood test, proven you weren't a match, and walked away with a clear conscience. Is that what you think I want? A way out? Wouldn't most people. It's not like you owe me anything." Michael considered his answer carefully. "When I was your age, I thought I knew exactly how my life would unfold. Engineering degree, learning the family business from my father, eventually marrying your mother." He smiled faintly at the memory. "Then one day, everything changed. I was told I was dying, that I had to leave behind everyone I loved. And you believed them." "I was young and scared," Michael admitted, "and I trusted my family." "Bad call," Aiden said, with a ghost of a smile. "Catastrophically bad," Michael agreed. "But here's what I've learned in 20 years of exile. Running away doesn't solve anything. It just postpones the reckoning." "Is that what this is? Your reckoning?" Michael shook his head. "This is me refusing to run anymore. You're my son, Aiden. I missed 19 years of your life because of lies and manipulation. I won't miss a single day more if I can help it." Aiden was quiet for a long moment. "If I survive this?" "When you survive this," Michael corrected firmly. "When," Aiden conceded. "What happens then? You go back to your hotels and penthouses. Mom and I go back to our apartment, and what? Christmas cards, awkward birthday dinners." The question pierced Michael's carefully constructed plans for the future. He'd been so focused on the transplant, on taking down Bruce, on reclaiming his company, that he hadn't fully considered what came after. "What do you want to happen?" he asked. Aiden looked surprised by the question. "I don't know. I've spent most of my life hating the idea of you. It's weird to actually not hate the reality." It was as close to acceptance as Michael could hope for at this stage. "Let's start there then, with not hating each other. The rest we can figure out together. You, me, and your mother." Megan appeared in the doorway, her hair disheveled from sleeping in the chair, but her eyes alert. "They're ready to start the prep," she said softly. A nurse entered with the pre-surgery medication for Aiden. As she adjusted his IV, Michael noticed her hands trembling slightly. "You're new," Dr. Chen said from behind Megan, her tone suddenly sharp. "I don't recognize you from my team." The nurse stiffened. "I'm from the float pool. They assigned me this morning." Dr. Chen stepped forward, her gaze dropping to the medication syringe. "May I see that, please?" Something in her tone must have alarmed the nurse, because she suddenly jerked away. "It's just the standard protocol." "Then you won't mind if I verify it," Dr. Chen insisted, her hand extended. The standoff lasted only seconds before the nurse bolted for the door. Dropping the syringe, Dr. Chen blocked her path with surprising agility, and security personnel, alerted by the commotion, appeared to detain her. "What just happened?" Megan asked, her voice shaking. Dr. Chen carefully picked up the discarded syringe with a tissue. "I believe someone just tried to administer a medication that would have made Aiden's body reject the transplant." She turned to Michael. "Someone very determined doesn't want this procedure to succeed." The realization struck Michael with physical force. Bruce wasn't just trying to protect his position anymore. He was actively trying to ensure Aiden's death. The stakes had escalated from corporate manipulation to attempted murder. "We need to move up the timeline," Michael decided. "How quickly can we do this?" "I've already alerted the surgical team," Dr. Chen replied. "We can be ready in an hour." Michael nodded, then turned to Megan. "There's something I need to do before the surgery." He took her hands. "I need you to protect Aiden. Don't let anyone near him who isn't personally vouched for by Dr. Chen." "Where are you going?" Megan asked, alarmed. "To make a phone call that's 20 years overdue." Michael squeezed her hands. "I'll be back before they take him to surgery, I promise." In the hospital corridor, Michael dialed a number he'd memorized from his research the previous day. "Federal Bureau of Investigation, Financial Crimes Division," answered a crisp voice. "This is Michael Granger of Granger International Hotels," he said, watching as security escorted the fake nurse away. "I need to report corporate fraud, attempted murder, and a 20-year conspiracy that's about to claim my son's life if we don't stop it now." As he detailed the evidence to the increasingly interested federal agent, Michael watched through the window as Megan sat beside Aiden, her hand stroking his hair. Time was running out for their son, but for the first time in 2 decades, Michael wasn't running away from the fight. He was running toward it, with everything he had. The FBI agent listened with increasing interest as Michael laid out the decades-long conspiracy. By the time he ended the call, 2 federal agents were en route to the hospital, and another team was being dispatched to Granger Tower with a warrant. "We'll need your formal statement later," the agent had told him, "but our priority is securing any evidence before it disappears and protecting your son." Michael returned to Aiden's room where preparations for surgery were already underway. The hospital had implemented extraordinary security measures at Dr. Chen's insistence: identity verification for all medical personnel, surveillance of the surgical suite, and 2 hospital security officers posted outside Aiden's door. "Everything's set," Dr. Chen informed him. "We've cleared the schedule for immediate surgery. The transplant team is assembling now." Michael nodded, then turned to Megan, who stood by Aiden's bedside, her composure remarkable despite the terror she must have been feeling. The FBI is on their way, he told her quietly. I've given them everything. The will, the falsified medical records, the evidence of Bruce's involvement in tampering with your prenatal vitamins. Will they get here in time to stop him from trying again? Megan's voice was barely audible. They're sending agents here first to secure Aiden's safety, Michael assured her. Then they'll move on Bruce. Dr. Chen approached with a nurse, this one thoroughly vetted. It's time to begin the pre-op procedures for both of you, she said. Michael, we'll need to start harvesting your bone marrow soon. Michael nodded. But before the medical team could whisk him away, the door opened and Linda Granger stepped into the room. Everyone froze. How did you get in here? Michael demanded, instinctively moving between his mother and Aiden's bed. Linda looked smaller somehow. Her usual imperious demeanor diminished. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her normally perfect makeup slightly smudged. I told them I was family, she said simply. Your son's grandmother. You have no right to claim that relationship now, Megan said, her voice icy. Linda flinched but held her ground. I know, but I needed to see him, just once. Her gaze shifted to Aiden, who was watching the exchange with wary curiosity. And to warn you. Warn us about what? Michael asked suspiciously. Bruce knows you went to the FBI. He has someone inside the hospital. Not just that nurse. Linda clutched her designer handbag with white-knuckled fingers. He's desperate. Michael. He knows if this transplant succeeds, and the truth comes out, he loses everything. How convenient that you've suddenly developed a conscience, Michael said bitterly. After 20 years of lies. Linda's eyes filled with tears. I never wanted it to go this far. The deception, yes. Keeping you from Megan, yes. But not this. Not harming a child. Not my grandson. Who is his accomplice here? Dr. Chen interjected, cutting through the family drama with clinical precision. Linda hesitated, then opened her handbag to remove a folded paper. I found this in Bruce's study last night. It's a list of people he's paid off, including someone in hospital administration and an anesthesiologist scheduled for today's procedure. Dr. Chen snatched the paper, her expression hardening as she read the names. I need to make some immediate changes to the surgical team, she said, rushing from the room. Michael studied his mother, searching for any sign of deception. Why are you really here? Because I can't undo what I've done, but I can try to stop things from getting worse, Linda replied, her voice breaking. And because I wanted to see him, my grandson, before it's too late. Too late for what? Aiden spoke up from the bed, his voice stronger than it had been in days. For you to play grandmother after trying to erase my existence for 19 years. Linda turned to him, her composure crumbling at the direct confrontation. You're right to hate me, she said. I've done unforgivable things. Hate requires emotional investment, Aiden replied coolly. I don't even know you. The clinical detachment in his voice, so like Michael's when confronting a business adversary, seemed to wound Linda more than any angry outburst could have. She visibly flinched. I deserve that, she acknowledged quietly. But there's something you all need to know. Something I've never told anyone. She looked at Michael. Your father knew about Megan's pregnancy. The words landed like a physical blow. What? He found out a few months after you left, I don't know how. Maybe one of his investigators. He was furious with me, with Bruce. Linda sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of her 68 years. He wanted to tell you immediately, to bring you home. Then why didn't he? Michael demanded. Because by then, Bruce had already. Linda's voice faltered. Bruce convinced him you were happy in Europe, building a life away from the pressure of being George Granger's son. He manipulated your father just as he'd manipulated you. That doesn't explain why father never told me about my son, Michael insisted. Linda looked away. George had his first stroke a week after discovering the truth. It affected his speech, his memory, by the time he recovered enough to communicate clearly. Months had passed. He tried to reach out to you then, but Bruce intercepted his messages, just as he'd intercepted Megan's. And you let this happen, Megan said, her voice tight with anger. You stood by while your brother manipulated everyone around him, destroying lives for his own gain. I was complicit, Linda admitted. At first willingly, then out of fear of what Bruce might do if I crossed him. She turned back to Michael. Your father never stopped trying to make things right. The night before his second fatal stroke, he changed his will again. He told me he was going to find a way to reunite you with your son. Whether I approved or not. What changes did he make to the will? Michael asked, suddenly alert. I don't know the details. Bruce made sure the final version disappeared. Linda's hands trembled as she reached into her bag again, this time withdrawing a small key. But your father gave me this the night before he died. He said if anything happened to him, I should give it to you when you returned. I kept it hidden instead. Michael took the key, examining it closely. It appeared to be for a safe deposit box, with a bank name and number engraved on its surface. This could be the evidence we need, he said, hope flaring for the first time. If Father documented Bruce's actions. The door burst open as Dr. Chen returned with 2 men in suits. The FBI agents, Michael presumed. We've secured the surgical team, Dr. Chen announced, and these gentlemen have agents positioned throughout the hospital. We're ready to proceed with the transplant. One of the agents stepped forward. Mrs. Granger, we'd like you to come with us, please. Linda rose without protest. I know. She turned to Michael one last time. I can't undo the past, but maybe I can help secure Aiden's future. Her gaze shifted to her grandson. I hope someday you'll find it in your heart to not hate me quite so much. Aiden's expression remained impassive, but after a moment, he gave a slight nod. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. As the agents escorted Linda out, hospital staff entered to prepare Aiden for surgery. A nurse approached Michael. We need to get you ready too, sir. Michael turned to Megan, who stood watching their son with a mixture of hope and terror. This is going to work, he told her with more confidence than he felt. He's going to be okay. Megan's eyes met his, and for a fleeting moment, Michael saw a reflection of the young woman he'd fallen in love with 2 decades earlier. Determined, resilient, and unwilling to accept defeat. He's a fighter, she said, like his father. As the medical team wheeled Aiden toward the operating room, Michael felt a strange sense of peace amidst the chaos. Whatever happened in the next few hours, with the surgery, with Bruce, with the evidence Linda had provided, he knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he belonged after 20 years of exile. With his family, the surgical floor buzzed with tension. FBI agents stationed themselves strategically throughout the hospital, their grave expressions and subtle earpieces marking them amid medical personnel. Outside the operating room, an agent scrutinized identification badges for every member of the surgical team. Michael lay on a gurney in the pre-op area, already in a hospital gown with an IV in his arm. The bone marrow harvesting procedure was invasive, requiring multiple extractions from his hip bone under anesthesia. Despite having negotiated billion-dollar deals without flinching, he found himself anxious now, not for himself, but for Aiden. Dr. Chen approached, surgical cap already in place. Aiden's being prepped in the adjacent operating room. We'll harvest your marrow first, process it immediately, and begin the transplant. How long will the whole procedure take? Michael asked. 4 to 5 hours for the harvesting and processing. Then another few hours for Aiden's portion. You'll be in recovery while his transplant is performed. She checked his IV line. Any questions before we begin? Just one. Is Aiden afraid? Dr. Chen's professional demeanor softened slightly. He's remarkably composed. He asked for his advanced calculus textbook to review while they prep him. Said it calms his mind. Michael smiled despite his anxiety. That sounds like him. He also asked me to give you a message. Dr. Chen hesitated, then continued. He said, "Don't mess this up, old man." A laugh escaped Michael. Unexpected, almost painful in its authenticity. It was the first glimpse of Aiden's sense of humor, a hint of the personality he'd been denied knowing for 19 years. Dr. Chen squeezed his shoulder. Take that as a good sign. He's starting to see you as his father in his own way. The anesthesiologist, a new one, thoroughly vetted after Linda's revelation, appeared at Michael's side. We're ready to begin, Mr. Granger. As the medication entered his IV, Michael felt the world growing hazy. His last conscious thought was of Aiden, hoping against hope that when they both woke, they would have a future to build together. Michael awoke in stages, his consciousness slowly swimming up through layers of anesthesia. The recovery room was dimly lit, monitors beeping steadily beside him. His hips and lower back throbbed with a deep, penetrating ache. Welcome back. a nurse said, noticing his open eyes. The harvesting went perfectly. They collected more than enough marrow for the transplant. Aiden? Michael's voice was rough from the breathing tube. Still in surgery, Dr. Chen will update you as soon as there's news. Michael checked the clock on the wall. He'd been unconscious for nearly 5 hours. The transplant would be well underway. Is there any word from the FBI about Bruce Granger? He asked the nurse. She shook her head. I haven't heard anything about that, sir. As Michael struggled to sit up, the door opened and Megan entered. She looked exhausted, the strain of the past few days etched deeply in her face. But there was something else in her expression, tentative hope. They've started the transplant, she said, approaching his bed. Dr. Chen says everything is going smoothly so far. Michael reached for her hand instinctively, and to his surprise, she didn't pull away. Have you heard anything from the agents who took my mother? Megan nodded. They're questioning her now, and they've arrested Bruce. Caught him trying to board a private jet to Switzerland. Relief flooded through him. So it's over. Not quite, said a voice from the doorway. An FBI agent Michael recognized from earlier entered, notepad in hand. Mrs. Granger has provided a full confession implicating Bruce in numerous crimes, including corporate fraud, falsifying medical records, and the tampering with prenatal supplements given to Miss Foster. She admitted it, Michael asked, surprised by his mother's cooperation. With one condition, that her confession could help save her grandson. The agent consulted his notes. She provided details about the compound Bruce added to the prenatal vitamins. Some experimental drug he acquired through black market channels. Our lab is analyzing it now. The information might help the doctors with Aiden's ongoing treatment. Michael exchanged a glance with Megan. Linda's redemption attempt seemed sincere, if decades too late. There's more, the agent continued. We accessed the safe deposit box with the key she provided. It contained a revised will from your father, executed the day before his death, along with detailed records of Bruce's financial misdeeds and a personal letter to you. He handed Michael a sealed envelope, yellowed with age, his father's distinctive handwriting spelling out his name on the front. I'll leave you to read it privately, the agent said, stepping back. We'll need a formal statement from both of you when you're recovered. But for now, your son's health takes priority. After the agent departed, Michael stared at the envelope, suddenly afraid of its contents. Do you want me to give you privacy? Megan asked quietly. Michael shook his head. Whatever it says affects both of us. With trembling fingers, he broke the seal and unfolded the pages inside. My son, if you're reading this, I have passed without the chance to make right the terrible wrongs done to you. By the time I discovered Bruce and your mother's deception regarding your health and the existence of your child, they had already entangled me in their web of lies. My first stroke was not coincidental. Bruce ensured I received incorrect medication after learning I had discovered the truth. By the time I recovered enough to act, months had passed, and their control over the company had solidified in my absence. I have spent my final days gathering evidence of their crimes. The revised will enclosed returns full control of Granger International to you immediately, with explicit provisions for your son's inheritance regardless of your acknowledgement timeline. More importantly, I hired private investigators to locate Megan Foster and your child. The reports are included in this box. I hope this information helps you reunite with them before it's too late. Know that I never stopped loving you, son. My greatest regret is allowing ambition to corrupt our family legacy and separate you from those you loved. Find your way back to them. Some bridges, once burned, can still be rebuilt. Your father, George Granger Michael, lowered the letter, emotions overwhelming him. All these years, his father had known the truth and tried to make amends. He tried to find us, he told Megan, his voice breaking. Before he died, Megan read the letter, her expression softening. He was trying to make it right. Too many years wasted, Michael said bitterly. Too much lost time. Not all lost, Megan replied, her voice gentle. Aiden is still here, still fighting, and so are we. The door opened again, and Dr. Chen entered, still in surgical scrubs, her face unreadable. The transplant procedure is complete, she announced. And Michael leaned forward despite the pain, his heart racing. There were complications midway through, Dr. Chen said slowly. Aiden's heart began showing significant arrhythmia, irregular beats that concerned us greatly. Megan's hand tightened around Michael's, her knuckles white. "We had to pause the procedure briefly," Dr. Chen continued. "It was touch and go for nearly 40 minutes. But," Michael prompted, hearing something in her tone that gave him hope. "But," Dr. Chen allowed a small smile to break through her professional demeanor. His body accepted the transplant. His heart stabilized. The procedure was ultimately successful. Megan's sob of relief filled the room as she collapsed into the chair beside Michael's bed. "He'll need to remain in isolation for several weeks," Dr. Chen cautioned. "The risk of infection is high, and we'll need to monitor for signs of rejection. But if all goes well, he should make a full recovery." "When can we see him?" Michael asked. "He's being moved to the isolation unit now. Once he's settled, you can see him briefly through the observation window." Dr. Chen checked her watch. "That should be in about an hour. I suggest you rest until then. Michael, your body has been through significant trauma today as well." After she left, Michael and Megan sat in silence, the weight of the day settling over them. 20 years of separation, lies, and manipulation had culminated in this moment of fragile hope. "He's going to live," Megan whispered, as if afraid saying it too loudly might tempt fate. "Yes," Michael agreed, reaching for her hand again. "And we're going to be there for every moment of his recovery. Together, if you'll allow it." Megan looked at him, her eyes swimming with tears, of relief, exhaustion, and something else. Something that might have been the first fragile tendril of forgiveness. "One step at a time," she said softly. "First, our son gets better, then we figure out the rest." It wasn't a promise of reconciliation, but it was a beginning. For now, that was enough. Outside the hospital room, life continued its frantic pace. FBI agents gathering evidence, Bruce facing interrogation, Linda attempting to make amends for decades of deception. But in this quiet moment, surrounded by the steady beep of monitors and the knowledge that their son was fighting his way back to health, Michael and Megan found something neither had expected to discover again: peace. 3 weeks after the transplant, Aiden was moved from isolated intensive care to a private recovery room. His progress, while steady, had been marked by setbacks. A spike of fever that had terrified everyone, moments of concerning blood work, hours when his body seemed to be fighting the very cells meant to save him. But today, as Michael entered the hospital room with an armful of books, he found his son sitting up in bed, color finally returning to his face. "More math?" Aiden asked, eyeing the stack skeptically. "I've already worked through everything Professor Davis sent over." Michael smiled, placing the books on the bedside table. "Not math, history of engineering. I thought you might enjoy something slightly less cerebral while you recover." "History of engineering is your idea of light reading?" Aiden raised an eyebrow, but reached for the top book anyway, examining its cover with interest. The past 3 weeks had transformed their relationship in ways Michael wouldn't have thought possible. Forced proximity during Aiden's recovery had broken down barriers that might have taken years to navigate otherwise. The boy was still guarded, still occasionally sharp with resentment, but there were moments of connection that felt increasingly natural. "Dr. Chen says your latest blood work shows significant improvement," Michael said, taking his usual seat beside the bed. "Your body is accepting the transplant cells beautifully." "Yeah, turns out you're good for something after all," Aiden replied, but the barb lacked its former edge. Almost teasing now, Michael had learned to read his son's deflections, the humor that masked vulnerability, the intellectual distance he maintained when emotions threatened to overwhelm him. So much like himself at that age. "How's Mom?" Aiden asked, setting the book aside. "Finalizing the paperwork on your new apartment. The building has an elevator and is close to both the hospital and Columbia, for when you're ready to resume classes." After the transplant, it had become clear that Megan's 4th-floor walk-up wouldn't be suitable for Aiden's extended recovery. Michael had offered one of the Granger residential properties, but Megan had insisted on maintaining some independence. They'd compromised on a spacious 3-bedroom apartment in a Granger-owned building, with Michael signing over the deed to Megan outright. And grandmother. Any news? The question still surprised Michael. Despite everything Linda had done, Aiden had shown an unexpected interest in his grandmother's fate. Perhaps it was academic curiosity, or perhaps something deeper. A desire to understand the full scope of the family that had been hidden from him. The federal prosecutors have agreed to a deal, given her cooperation. House arrest, Substantial financial penalties, but no prison time, considering her age and health. Michael studied his son's reaction. She's asked to see you when you're feeling stronger. Aiden nodded thoughtfully. Maybe, eventually. He picked at a loose thread on his blanket. And Bruce, not as fortunate. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Corporate fraud, falsifying medical records, and the tampering with your mother's prenatal vitamins. That last charge alone carries significant prison time. Michael didn't add that Bruce had attempted suicide in custody, unable to face the public disgrace. He'd survived, but would face trial from a psychiatric facility. A knock at the door interrupted them. Megan entered, followed by Dr. Chen. "Good news," the doctor announced, reviewing her tablet. "Your latest echocardiogram shows significant improvement in cardiac function. The myocardial walls are already showing signs of regeneration." "Meaning?" Megan prompted, hope evident in her voice. "Meaning the transplant is doing exactly what we hoped. The new stem cells are helping to regenerate damaged heart tissue." Dr. Chen smiled at Aiden. "You're responding even better than our most optimistic projections." "When can I go home?" Aiden asked, the question they'd all been waiting to voice. "If things continue this way, possibly by the end of next week." Dr. Chen made some notes in his chart. "You'll still need regular checkups, of course, and there are medication protocols we'll need to maintain for at least a year." "But he'll recover completely?" Michael asked, "based on current indicators." "I believe so. We'll need to be vigilant, but I'm increasingly confident that Aiden will make a full recovery." After Dr. Chen left, Megan sat on the edge of Aiden's bed, smoothing his hair back from his forehead, a maternal gesture that he accepted with only mild teenage embarrassment. "The apartment will be ready by the time you're discharged," she told him. "Your room has a view of the park, just like you wanted." "What about your work?" Aiden asked. The university semester already started. Megan had taken emergency leave from her teaching position to be with Aiden during his recovery. "The department has been incredibly supportive. I can teach reduced hours next semester, mostly advanced seminars that meet once a week. And I've adjusted my schedule to be in New York indefinitely," Michael added. "Between the two of us, you'll have all the support you need." Aiden looked between them, an unreadable expression crossing his face. "So that's the plan. You two are going to co-parent me like I'm 5 instead of 19. "That's not," Michael began. But Megan interrupted. "Your father and I are trying to figure this out as we go," she said honestly. "Neither of us wants to lose any more time with you, especially now that I'm not dying anymore." Aiden's attempt at dark humor fell flat as both parents flinched. "Sorry," he mumbled, looking away. "It's just weird, okay? 3 weeks ago, I only had Mom. Now I have a father, a grandmother I'm not sure I want to know, and a family legacy that's more like a soap opera than real life." Michael understood the disorientation Aiden was feeling. His own world had been upended just as dramatically. "Take it at your own pace," he said quietly. "None of us knows exactly how to do this. We just know we want to try." Something in his words seemed to reach Aiden, who nodded slowly. "I can work with that." Michael's phone buzzed with a text from Elizabeth, who had been managing the ongoing corporate crisis in his absence. The message was brief but significant. Board voted unanimously. "You're officially CO effective immediately. Press conference scheduled for next week if you're ready." He slipped the phone back into his pocket without responding. The company that had once been the center of his existence now seemed secondary to the people in this room. "I have something for you," Michael said, reaching into his jacket to remove an envelope. "The attorneys finished the paperwork yesterday." "What is it?" Aiden asked as Michael handed him the envelope. "A trust fund in your name. Your rightful inheritance as a Granger, with no strings attached." Michael watched his son's face carefully. "You can use it however you choose. Education, research, or to pursue any dreams you might have deferred because of financial constraints." Aiden opened the envelope, his eyes widening at the figure on the document. "This is what should have been yours from the beginning," Michael finished. "Consider it 19 years of birthday and Christmas presents rolled into one." Unexpectedly, Aiden laughed, a genuine sound that transformed his face, making him look younger and unburdened. "Most kids get a car for their 18th birthday. You went a little overboard." The tension in the room dissolved as all three of them laughed together for the first time. In that moment, they weren't a fragmented family piecing themselves back together through obligation and guilt. They were simply a young man and his parents, finding joy in each other's company. Later, as Michael prepared to leave for a brief meeting with the federal prosecutors, he paused at the door to look back at Megan and Aiden. They were absorbed in conversation, heads bent together over one of the books he'd brought, looking so alike in their mannerisms that it squeezed his heart. This was what Bruce and his mother had stolen from him. Not just years, but moments. Thousands of small, precious moments that could never be recovered. The anger that had driven him since discovering the truth had largely burned itself out, replaced by determination. He couldn't reclaim the past, but he could ensure their future held enough new moments to build something that, if not whole, was at least healing. Outside, spring had come to New York. The city emerging from winter's grip, just as they were emerging from the long winter of separation and deceit. Michael turned his face to the sun, feeling its warmth like a promise. Rebirth was possible, for all of them. 6 months later, the rooftop garden of the Granger Manhattan glistened under string lights as the sun began to set over the city skyline. White flowers adorned every available surface, their subtle fragrance mingling with the early summer breeze. A small gathering of guests chatted quietly, turning occasionally to glance at the temporary altar erected at the garden's edge. Michael stood at the back, adjusting his tie nervously, not because of the ceremony to come, but because of his companion Aiden, healthy and vibrant in a perfectly tailored suit, stood beside him, fidgeting with his boutonniere. "Remind me why I agreed to be your best man," Aiden asked, though his smile betrayed his feigned annoyance. "I hate public speaking." "Because you're the only person who could possibly fill the role," Michael replied simply. "And because your mother insisted." The past 6 months had been transformative for all of them. Aiden's recovery had progressed remarkably, his strength returning faster than even Dr. Chen had predicted. By summer, he'd been cleared to resume limited physical activity and had enrolled in advanced physics courses at Columbia for the fall semester. Michael had officially taken the helm at Granger International, implementing sweeping changes to the corporate structure and ethical guidelines. His first major initiative had been establishing the Aiden Granger Foundation for Cardiovascular Research, funded with a significant portion of his personal fortune, and dedicated to finding cures for rare cardiac conditions. And then there was Megan. What had begun as cautious co-parenting had gradually evolved into rediscovered friendship, and eventually, over late-night conversations while Aiden slept, into something deeper. The love that had never truly died found new life, transformed and matured by the years and trials that had separated them. "She's nervous too, you know," Aiden commented, breaking into Michael's thoughts. "Your mother, nervous." Michael smiled at the thought. Megan had faced down academic committees, medical crises, and federal prosecutors with unwavering composure. "I doubt that. Trust me," Aiden insisted. "I've never seen her try on so many outfits or worry so much about her hair. She's terrified. Of marrying me. Of everything going right for once." Aiden shrugged. "She's used to fighting against the tide. Being happy makes her suspicious." Michael nodded, understanding completely. He'd felt the same disbelief these past months, waking each morning half expecting to find it had all been a dream. Aiden's recovery, Megan's forgiveness, their second chance at being a family. The small orchestra began playing, signaling it was time to take their places. As they moved toward the altar, Michael spotted Linda in the second row, looking smaller and more subdued than he'd ever seen her. Her health had deteriorated rapidly following the legal proceedings, the stress and shame taking a visible toll. Despite everything, she'd been included today at Aiden's insistence, part of his ongoing effort to understand the complex web of family that had shaped his existence. "Ready?" Aiden asked as they took their positions. "More than I've ever been for anything," Michael replied. The music changed, and the guests rose as Megan appeared at the garden entrance. She wore a simple ivory dress that caught the fading sunlight, her hair loose around her shoulders just as it had been when they'd first met 2 decades earlier. No elaborate veil or train. This wasn't a first wedding with all its traditional trappings, but a conscious recommitment, eyes wide open to both past and future. As she walked toward them, Michael saw the slight tremble in her hands as she clutched her bouquet. Aiden had been right. She was nervous, but her eyes never left Michael's. And by the time she reached the altar, her smile had steadied. "We gather here today," the officiant began. Not to begin a journey, but to recognize one that has endured despite impossible odds. Michael and Megan's path has been unusual, marked by separation and reunion, by loss and by remarkable finding. Michael barely heard the words that followed, too caught up in the reality of this moment. Standing beside the woman he'd never stopped loving and the son he'd found against all odds. When it came time for vows, he spoke from the heart without consulting the notes he'd prepared. 20 years ago, we stood on the brink of a future together that was stolen from us by lies and manipulation, he said, holding Megan's hands in his. I can't reclaim those lost years or undo the pain of our separation, but I can promise you this. Every day forward is ours. Every moment a gift I will never take for granted. I love you, the bright-eyed student who challenged me to see beyond my privileged worldview, the incredibly strong woman who raised our son alone, and the partner who found the courage to let me back into your lives when you had every reason not to. Tears shimmered in Megan's eyes as she responded. I spent so many years angry, building walls around my heart to protect myself from the pain of your absence. But those same walls that kept out hurt also kept out hope. She glanced at Aiden, who watched them with undisguised emotion. Our son taught me that holding on to anger costs too much, that forgiveness, while difficult, creates space for healing. She squeezed Michael's hands. I choose to fill that space with love, for the man you were, the man you are now, and the future we can build together. The exchange of rings, simple platinum bands engraved with their initials and Aiden's, felt like closing a circle that had remained painfully incomplete for 2 decades. By the power vested in me, the officiant concluded, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Again, at last, and forever. As Michael kissed his bride, applause erupted from their small gathering of friends and colleagues. But it was Aiden's embrace that followed, arms wrapping around both his parents. That truly sealed the moment. During the intimate reception that followed, Aiden disappeared briefly, returning with an old leather-bound book tucked under his arm. As the celebration wound down, he approached his parents. I found this in grandfather's study, he explained, placing the book on the table between them. It was hidden in a secret compartment in his desk. Michael recognized his father's personal journal, identical to the business ledgers he'd examined months earlier. Where did you get access to his study? Grandmother gave me the key, Aiden said. She thought I might want to know more about him. He opened the journal to a marked page. There's something you both should see. The journal entry, dated shortly before George Granger's death, contained a shocking revelation. DNA results confirm my suspicions. If Michael knew the truth about his bloodline, everything would change. Bruce cannot be allowed to discover this information. He would use it to destroy what remains of our family. What does that mean? Megan asked, looking between Michael and Aiden. I'm not sure, Michael admitted, scanning the cryptic entry. Father was already suffering cognitive effects from his first stroke. This might be confusion, or it might be something else entirely, Aiden suggested, his analytical mind clearly intrigued by the mystery. Grandmother mentioned something about family records stored in the Granger estate in Connecticut. We could start there. As they discussed the puzzling entry, Michael felt a peculiar blend of anticipation and contentment. The mystery in his father's journal represented a new chapter to explore together. As a family, whatever secrets remained hidden in the Granger past, they would uncover them side by side. Later that night, as guests departed and the city lights came alive below them, Michael stood at the rooftop's edge with Megan and Aiden, his arm around his wife's waist, his son leaning against the railing beside them. So what happens now? Aiden asked, the question floating on the night air between them. Megan leaned into Michael's embrace. Now we live, without secrets, without fear, without the weight of all those lost years. As a family, Michael added, still marveling at the word, at how right it felt after so long. Aiden nodded, his expression thoughtful as he gazed out at the city sprawled before them. A family with a mystery to solve. Michael laughed, recognizing the spark of curiosity that mirrored his own. Tomorrow is soon enough for mysteries. Tonight is for celebrating. As they turned to rejoin their remaining guests, Michael caught sight of their reflection in the rooftop's glass doors. 3 figures, similar in bearing and expression, unmistakably connected by blood, and now by choice. the family that had been separated by lies had found their way back to each other, proving that some bonds could never truly be broken. The future stretched before them, not perfect but profoundly theirs, to shape, to cherish, and to live together at last.